She has said when, and she has gone. Our back office here at Cyversity has given us the cue that we are now live and on and ready to go. Welcome everyone who is here for this Cyversity Engage Impact interview series focusing on communications. I'm just going to move to the next slide so that you guys everyone in the audience can see who we're discussing, who we're talking with today. These three individuals have roles in security and cybersecurity that all function inside of an environment where communication is critical, where communication is pivotal, where communication or miscommunication can wreak havoc on an organization. As you can see, we're speaking with Milou. Milou today, she's a security operations. She works in the Security Operations Center as an analyst for CVS. You all know that organization. There's David Hahn here. Also, he's a senior security analyst at McKinsey. He'll tell us more about what he does there because it's some really interesting conversations that we've had with him leading up to this discussion. And also David James, our resident DC guy, who is a technical program manager in cybersecurity oversight at Google. Just a little background about Cyversity, the organization that hosts this interview series. This is our mission. Is to achieve the consistent representation of women, traditionally underserved communities, and veterans as well, all veterans as well. And to do that in the cybersecurity industry, and we do that through programs that are designed to diversify, educate, and empower. And we do this specifically because we know that the adversaries that we face, they're very diverse. They have a different way of thinking. They have a different diverse thought process on exfiltrating and compromising the organizations that we protect. And so from our perspective here at Cyversity, diversity of thought, diversity of talent, diversity of capabilities, it all matters in the fight to combat the evolving cybersecurity threats in the landscape today. As a membership organization, Cyversity has two separate levels of membership. One's a professional membership, one's a student membership. And you can see that for professionals, it's $100 a year. And for students, it's $20 a year. I was getting ready to say 20,000, but it's $20 a year. And in all of that, members and non-members have specific resources that they have access to. And like with most folks, you always wonder, well, if I'm going to pay X dollars for a membership, what do I get? And so here are some of the things that are germane to Cyversity. There are chapters across the country. We now have, I think, 13 chapters in some major metropolitan cities like Austin, like New York, like Florida, like Boston, and in those areas. We also have a mentorship program. Milou is one of our former mentors and has risen to the ranks of an analyst through that whole process. If she wanted to give you a little bit background about that whole mentorship engagement, she can in her when she gets an opportunity to speak. It's a 16-week engagement. A good portion of that 16-week engagement happens to be one-on-one with a dedicated leader from across the industry. And what's interesting about this mentorship program is that mentorship from Cyversity's perspective, really focuses on technology, but it also broadens its engagement to, just life as a cybersecurity analyst. What to expect, how to deal with it, all of those things. How does this support your family, your life, and your engagement, you as a person? What we do in cybersecurity, in security, that's what we do. It's not necessarily who we are as human beings and as individuals. There's also scholarships, and Cyversity, since our inception in 2014, has given out thousands of scholarships that either focus on helping an individual with their tuition, with their rooming, with their education, with classes, and with Cyversity, we've got a myriad of educational tools. There's also events as part of our resources. Here in Austin, we just did. Well, the last time I saw Milou was at the national conference. It was in September of last year in Orlando, where we focused. It was a huge focus on the new direction that Cyversity is going. We introduced and we introduced and invited our new board members during that conference, and they laid out a whole new platform as to where we're going as an organization. And so Cyversity hosts these virtual and in-person events, and they offer opportunities for networking, and they offer opportunities for empowerment, collaboration, all of those things that events do offer. This on-demand training, where Cyversity and our partners offer low to no-cost training through organizations like ThreatStream and IRC Squared and CompTIA, Fortinet. There's a training out with United Airlines that's focused on GRC. So there's a whole host of trainings that are available to, our membership. And of course, there's networking that is crucial and critical. In our last conversation that we spoke with the new CISO from Depository Trust, Unessi Nunez, who was speaking about sponsorship. Part of networking is developing relationships with individuals who want to sponsor you. You may know they're sponsoring you. You may not know they're sponsoring you. And then they speak for you when you're not in the room. These are some of the highlights that we exhibit throughout the year. From February to December, you could see we have Black History Month. In June, LGBTQ and Pride Month. September is Latin, Hispanic, Latino, or Latinx Heritage Month. October, you can see, is coming up is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and so forth and so on. It's 45 minutes. You won't even be able to have to mute because all of those things are done for you. And this session is going to be recorded and will be distributed. Our back-end office will probably put the link in, if they get a chance to put the link into the private chat that gives you an opportunity to see our where our chat is. Over in the, I'm looking at the private chat, but I could see that Caroline has already put into the comments chat the link for everyone. They're linked in, and welcome. Welcome, Milou. Welcome, David Hahn. See, I've got to go through the last names here because there are 3 Davids and 1 Milou here. David Hahn, David James, and Milou. So look, our audience usually wants to get a quick, brief introduction on who you guys are. A minute, 2 minutes. Let's start with the ladies first. Milou, please, you first.
Well, hey everyone. So I'm Milou. I am currently a level 3 Security Operations Center Analyst at CVS Health. And I'm really excited to be here to talk about the important topic of communication in our industry.
Great. David Hahn?
Yeah, it's great to be here as well. David Elcock, would you prefer that I do like my background and whatnot as well?
Very short one.
Okay. So great to meet you all. I'm a senior security analyst at McKinsey & Company. I'm based out of DC, and previous to this role, I was at a vendor, a cyber threat intel vendor called Recorded Future, and I was a customer success manager there working with 150 different accounts. So I got to kind of be on the vendor side in our industry, and then now I'm a practitioner inside an organization. So I hope to share perspectives from both sides of this industry. I'll pass to David James.
Yes, and I'm David James. I'm currently a technical program manager at Google in their public sector area, and I have over 16 years of experience being a consultant, working in all areas of security. Very passionate about helping out folks that are in the field and also looking to join. And I do want to give a little slight disclaimer. I'm representing myself, not Google as an organization.
Dave, you want to do that too, David Hahn?
Yes, same thing. I represent myself and not my company.
And me,
yeah, I also am representing myself and not my company.
I'm a person of the world. Hey, so listen, this is, we've had some really interesting conversations leading up to this moment where we're talking about communications, miscommunications, really what we're talking about is miscommunication in this industry and in our environments. I'd like each of you, if you can, just to share your perspective on why effective communication is critical, crucial in this field of cybersecurity. And if you would, just give an example. Milou, let's start with you first.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think communication is really important, especially in my role as a security operations center analyst, because a lot of times, incidents are handed off between different levels of analysts. So you have your initial triage coordinators who are just determining whether something is true or false positive, and then they'll hand it up to another analyst who will investigate that, and they will write a report that hands it up to me, and then I will determine, what kind of the next steps are that need to be done with that incident. And so communication is like really important through each of those stages. Otherwise, something really major could be missed, and that's like not a good thing. And also, it's just really important for being able to get a good scope of like if something is an emerging incident or something that needs to be dealt with, and having a good understanding of that. So communication is just like absolutely paramount. And then if it is something serious, it's really important to be able to communicate really clearly with other stakeholders in the business about why the security incident or problem that you're seeing matters, because that really is what we're here for. In the end of the day, is being able to communicate why it matters and be able to protect the business, and you can't do that without communication.
Are you able to share an example or experience of something that you've seen happen where the communication just didn't flow correctly and properly?
Yeah, so I guess, like there can always be like little things, sometimes some little aspect of an investigation will actually be like really important to the understanding of the investigation, but because it wasn't worded a certain way, then it's not necessarily passed up with the severity that it needs to be. And so that's kind of an example of things that I can see sometimes where, understanding of severity and why you think something is of a certain severity is like really important to communicate, and where I've seen that there have been potential misses.
Sure. Same question for you, David James. Your perspective on why communication is critical. And earlier on in this conversation with you, you shared something that was like, ooh, really how it really happened. It was it turned out to be a sort of travesty or something devastating. But please share your perspective.
I think communication is like the bedrock of cybersecurity in general, right? A lot of the core functions are like detection, response, and reporting, which, you can argue against detection, but the response and reporting, the response with the coordination of various teams, trying to respond to a emerging incident or a threat or something going on like that, as well as the response that you have, response goes just beyond, doing something to fix or mitigate an issue. It goes to reporting to your leadership, both inside the technology organization and externally, right? And that I feel like is almost as important as your technical response, right? You want to fix it, but being able to communicate what the current impact is when it's ongoing, and as things are progressing, is critically important, because ultimately cybersecurity is part of a business or an organization, and you want to make sure that it can function properly. One example that Mr. Elcock, I guess I should say, because we're all Davids here, right, was alluding to was back in my consulting days. I was part of a consulting engagement where we deployed a system. It was identity management focused, so you can imagine how many areas that touched, right? We had really, some communication issues in terms of the development of updates to that system, right? And really the breakdown from a technology standpoint was at peer reviews. The way peer reviews were being done, wasn't the proper it wasn't the proper method, right? They documented it, but there wasn't any communication to say, hey, peer reviews are being done improperly, right? Now, this didn't manifest in the user acceptance testing. This manifested in prod several deployments later. So trying to, one little small misstep of, doing the proper process, we're not peer reviewing properly, really manifested into a large issue. I think in terms of ways that it could have been avoided is, if, one of the developers raised their hand and said, hey, this isn't right, right? That could have solved it. The manager that was overseeing the peer reviews, if you actually looked at it and saw, hey, David Hahn created the code and David Hahn is peer reviewing, that could have flagged it, right? And then the sad part of the communication, which was my part, was I was doing support. So I had to sit in front of the CISO and tell them, hey, everything's going wrong, right? Very uncomfortable conversations, but being able to communicate what we're doing and how we're progressing, reaching out to the SaaS vendor, things like that, reaching out to this team. This is what we're doing during the investigation. Minimal amount of help, but it's something. Communication is on all levels,
Yeah, sounds like that was a complicated or uncomfortable position to be in, to have to report up. And I had just wrote that while you were talking, David, and connecting and communicating up to executives. It's a crucial part of the business. David, when you get it, can you come off mute and talk to us about your perspective and why communication is so critical and effective? And give an example if you happen to have one.
Yeah. So Milou and David James framed it from like a cybersecurity day-to-day work perspective. I want to kind of take a slightly different approach and frame it in the context of our careers, because I like thinking about careers and whatnot, as Milou knows. So I think if we were to poll all the different security professionals that are out there in the world, I think we would, and asking, why did you get into security? I think we'd probably find a couple different answers. It might be good compensation, prestige, the impact, the interestingness of it all. But I think right now, in this current time, it's kind of difficult to achieve these things because of the labor market, specifically for cybersecurity and writ large, and just the economic times. So I think all of us, or many of us, see that security functions are more and more in a position to have to kind of prove their value, justify themselves to business leaders. So right now, more than ever, we have to excel at our craft as security professionals. And I think a part of that, beyond doing the actual functional tasks of whatever security domain we work in, is clear, concise, and eloquent communications, both to our teams, our leadership, and to our executives and clients and stakeholders as well. So I think we all agree that in general, the security community and the security team have important things to say, but even if we have the most cutting edge, most useful, most impactful insight or thoughts, if you just kind of say it if it's not communicated well, then you're just going to hit a brick wall and it's not really going to get anywhere, right? With good communication, hopefully you'll be able to kind of go across or go above that wall and actually have your message land in the hearts and minds of your audience, whoever that may be. So I think the crux of my argument here, and then over the course of this panel, is going to be that good communication gives power and life to your ideas. And I think that can really make or break your reputation among your colleagues, your leadership, and your clients, like I mentioned before. So kind of to tie it together to what I started off with, if you want to have a career that's meaningful, that's well compensated, and ultimately impactful for us, or organizations, and the world, then I think it's important. It's a must to hone your communication skills. And I see a question for me about PowerPoint. I'm guessing we'll answer that question toward the end of the.
I'm sure that's somebody that knows you, and somebody that knows you, and is giving you an opportunity to talk about your greatness when it comes to PowerPoint. But to stay for a minute with the stream of the conversation that we've just been having, I know that we've talked about challenges in communication, the challenges that cybersecurity professionals face, whether that challenge manifests itself in cultural something cultural that has to do with the corporate culture, cross-team cultures. I just wrote down here also while you guys were speaking, communications between departments, communications between technology and general counsel, between technology and the sales team, all of that types of communications. And also something that David James, Mr. James mentioned was, time zone cultural communication between time zones, because they were working with a group somewhere in another time zone with a whole different language to some degree. Talk about these challenges between these types of challenges that are both culturally based, course team based, and time zone based, if you will. Milou, let's start with you again, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think coming from the more technical side, I think that one of the bigger issues that I found, or challenges, I guess, is that speaking for myself, I love investigating. I love digging through the logs because I love finding weird things, and that makes me like really excited to find something weird that needs to be fixed. But I think that it's really easy for my perspective as a security practitioner to become very siloed, where I'm just looking at specific cloud misconfigurations or other kinds of like logging issues, and not really keeping in mind what necessarily these things that I'm finding might mean in the larger sense of the business and why they're important. And so it's not necessarily about like this cool, weird thing that I found, but like really about like, and the solution that I think could potentially fix it, but really about like why the problem matters in the first place, and what and why that problem matters to the business. And so I think that it's not something I've always tried to keep in mind within my own career, is to not let myself, become siloed in my thinking, and to really always try to understand, my role as just a piece of the larger puzzle of the security and the success of the organization. And I think the bigger, for me, I found the more that I understand how I fit in and how what I'm finding fits into the larger picture, the better my communication is with just other people in the company, with just understanding how to protect and serve the business or organization in the best way possible.
Great. Thank you, Milou. And, I was just, as you were speaking, of course, I'm writing notes and taking notes and looking to come back and have some other questions. David Hahn, communications, this cultural sort of communications, what's the big deal with it and its relationship to how important it is to the business? I mean, you've got, just like the government, you've got the executive, you've got the judicial, and obviously the communication's not working so great there, but how does it work? What's the crux of the cultural challenge there, the criticality challenge there between these different levels, from folks that are working in the trenches, I'll use that term, to a chairman of the board?
Yeah.
Talk about that for real briefly.
So a couple thoughts there. I think where you sit is where you stand. I love that saying, because it's a fun thing to say, and also I think there's truth in that. Like if you're the chairman of a board or a chair of the board, then you're thinking about strategy. You're thinking about things that are, what should we invest in? If you're, in the trenches, so to speak, and looking at different logs, or if you're looking at very, very specific technical things, then that's what you're looking at. So your view, and I think this kind of goes along with what Milou was saying. It's important for Milou to zoom out and look at what the business is working on, right? So I think from that perspective, I think it's important for us as technologists to look at what the business is doing, because at the end of the day, if you're working at a for-profit organization, then it is there to make money. So we have to think about how can we, as technologists, as security practitioners and professionals, enable that revenue generating activity. If it's government or if it's a nonprofit, then how can we as security professionals enable the mission? So I think that's kind of how we as security practitioners can connect with the overall organization's missions. Yeah.
Off mute for a second. Milou, before I move to David James, can I just ask you a question about log review and discovery? When you review something and you're just going through and you find this anomaly or this challenge in the code or what have you, how do you particularly communicate that to either another department or someone, your direct report that has to take the next several series of steps? How do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if something is escalated to me from like a lower tier that they've determined it to be suspicious or malicious, and I'm reviewing that, or I happen to find something, then I tend to write up my own report. And when I'm writing my own report, the two most important things that I think components of this report are like, well, I guess the most important is like my bottom line up front, my bluff, where I just explain what it is that was found. And then just briefly, like how it was found, where, answering the who, what, when, where, why is just really important. And then detailing what I believe the next steps should be for whoever I am handing it off to, or what the next steps were that I took for remediation if it's something that I could handle on my own per procedure. And so that's like the most important thing. Like that bottom line up front is something that should be understood across departments, across all levels. Like anyone should be able to like look at my work and like understand what I did with it and like why. And then underneath that bottom line up front, I like to include, more in depth on the actual technical steps of how I was thinking about it, what I investigated, my evidence, everything that supports that bottom line up front. So that's just like, I think honestly, writing that investigation report is almost more important than the investigation itself. It protects me in case I made a mistake. It communicates things clearly. It just really, without it, like nothing else really matters. So that's so important. And I think if you're aspiring to be a SOC analyst or any kind of technical thing, like being able to write that report and write it well is just such a crucial skill and has helped me so much.
Perfect. David James, back to you about the common communications challenges that happen in, that cybersecurity professionals face, whether it's cultural, whether it's, you've got incredible expertise here as well as David and Milou. So just share your perspective, please.
Yeah, I'll try and capture the complex cultural piece, right? Cultural goes geographic region, but what often gets overlooked is localized culture, right? For instance, industries. I was a consultant before, and David Hahn could probably attest to this. You get a new project, you're thrown in wherever, right? I worked in a retail client, right? The way they operate is a lot differently than in a government client, right? Government clients tend to be more formalized. Things are more policy based. So the way I have to communicate, say improvements to cybersecurity is I need to have a policy reference with it. This policy, NIST 853 says these controls must be in place, right? When I'm in retail, you probably want to tie it into the customer. This helps protect the customer because it's, the number one thing, right? Also, now I'm in the tech industry, just in general, it's more of this kind of laid back, they're founded in California, dressed down, you want to kind of approach things more casually, which is opposite to say East Coast culture. Tell me what it is, almost like bad news up front. Here it is, boom, in your face. They're not trying to hear the fluff. They don't want the dressing, just here it is, so just adjusting to different cultures in terms of, actions. The best way to do it is is to kind of listen. I find value in those 5 minutes before meetings, right? Like, don't just jump into it. How are you doing? How's the weather? Oh, you're located in New York, and this other person on the call is located in Texas. That gives you some cultural clues, just if you have some exposure to that. Another thing is, if you're a leader, I've been a people manager several times, right? You don't want it's in humans' nature to kind of get carbon copies of yourself, right? But really, you want to create a diverse team. Cyversity is, really encouraging that. But if you have, say, like I may hire someone that's a woman from a different area of the country if I'm in a national or international firm. I'll pick up someone that maybe I'm a little more extroverted. Maybe I'll get someone more introverted. And when you have a diversity of your team members, you can communicate that and get your points across in ways that may be blind spots to me, right? So that culture goes from industry, it goes to geographic location domestically, geographic location globally, and most importantly, like, everyone comes from a different background. Just because like at one time I had a project in Japan, there were some people that felt like they knew Japanese people, and it's like, no, everyone's different regions of Japan, different people in the same region, everyone is different. So it's important to always listen and understand your audience, and that's in cybersecurity and really across your whole professional life and personal life.
Sure. Is the question to all of you, is communications and correct communication, is that a mindset too? I mean, do you have to really spend time really getting yourself acclimated to having the right mindset? David, you first. David Hahn. We got to make sure.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I think so. I think the mindset piece is really important, because all the other kind of tactical things that you might read in like a blog post or a LinkedIn post or something like that, I think stems from a mindset. So for example, I personally think when you're communicating with the audience, be it in a one-on-one context, be it in, via Slack or email or on a Zoom call, regardless of what that mode of communication is, I think the most important mindset to have is, how can I make it easiest for them? Because ultimately, if you're communicating something with your audience, you're trying either to persuade them to do something, you're either trying to inform them of something and to have some sort of knowledge, but ultimately you're selling an idea, or you're selling a concept or some project or something. And the easier you can make it for your audience to understand, acknowledge, and then do the thing you're asking them to do, the better it is for them and the better it is for you, because hopefully we're asking for something or suggesting something because it would make some sort of an impact, right? So I think make it easy for your audience is like a pretty important takeaway.
Sure. Milou, David, James, do you guys want to weigh in on that question about mindset?
I want to weigh in. One small piece is I feel like the development of good communication is an ongoing thing. I don't think there's a destination. I think what David Hahn said was really good, usable things, but there's no perfection, right? There's always a new culture, and not just geographically, just a new culture to learn, a new way to communicate an idea, an ever improving process.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, it's ever evolving. And I think for me, thinking about the mindset aspect, for me, like thinking about how I'm going to communicate my findings really helps clarify my investigations and my work for me. I think it's really easy in my role, especially as someone who just loves digging around in weird stuff. It's really easy for me to get down rabbit holes or go places that might not necessarily matter to the scope of what I am looking at. And thinking about, okay, so why am I looking at this? Why does this matter? Who am I going to be talking to? How am I going to organize this in a logical way so that the next person who looks at my work understands what I was thinking and how I got there? That helps me organize my own notes and my own next steps so that I can present that document to others. So having communication in the forefront of my mind is like, I'm not just looking at this because it's fun. I mean, I am looking at it because it's fun, but ultimately I'm looking at it because there is a potential problem here that needs to be fixed and it needs to be communicated well. And how am I going to do that? And then that also becomes like part of the fun problem that I'm solving as well. So it's just like, I see communication as just really built into the fabric of everything, not like a separate thing, just a fundamental part of doing work in this industry and really life.
Sure. I guess, but is it, do we make assumptions about communications when we're dealing with our colleagues, our peers, our folks that we report to? What are some of the assumptions that we make? Milou, let me come back to you since you just finished making a statement. What are some of the assumptions that you made that you said, at some point you're like, nope, that's not going to work. I got to fix that.
I mean, like, there's always assumptions. I think, especially in my line, like, I guess going back to the cultural piece, like, everyone always feels, right? Everyone, that's kind of a blanket statement, but I think most people feel a little bit like of the imposter syndrome or like insecure, like they're not technical enough. And like no one in this industry is technical enough. I mean, like there are a couple people I guess that are like super, super good at everything, but like most people, like we're all learning. There's so much, this industry is so big. So like, it can be kind of like nerve-wracking to, you don't want someone that you're communicating with to like think that you think that they're dumb or for them to think that you're dumb or something. Like ego can like definitely play a little bit of a role in this. And so, sometimes that can lead to overspelling something out or not spelling something out enough because you're thinking about that ego piece. And so the more that we can remove the ego, I think, out of it and just trying to like speak, I think, if you're able to explain what you do to like a 5-year-old, or like being able to like really break it down, like I love the like how to make a sandwich documentation strategy where you break it down like someone has never made a sandwich before. So I think about that a lot when I'm writing and wanting to be really, really clear. But also like respectful of who I'm passing this on to, and I would hope that same clarity and respect without ego is also, shared with me when I'm communicated with as well.
David or David Hahn or David James, anything to add on that piece, that the question I just asked Milou about the specifics around communicating up or down or across teams?
Yeah, I think there's one of the comments I prepared ties in pretty nicely with this. I think the biggest assumption we make when we're communicating is, well, I think we have to make assumptions, right? That's part of the
business,
part of your judgment, right? Part of the business. So I think that insight and wisdom comes with time and with practice. That said, I think when we just make uninformed assumptions, I think that's where we can get into problems. And I think the biggest assumption that we often make as technologists is assuming that the person you're talking to is aware of whatever you're talking about or understands why it's important. So before you, like, to extend the sandwich metaphor, because I love that, right? So like before we even talk about like how to make a sandwich, maybe it's important, maybe they don't even know what a sandwich is. Maybe they come from a culture where sandwiches aren't really a thing. Maybe they have to understand that like a sandwich comes in many forms. Maybe it's like a Subway sandwich, or maybe it's a hot dog. I think, are hot dog sandwiches? I don't know, probably not, but but like these are assumptions that we have to like check and get on the same page with them, right? Yeah, I think it's important to clarify with them, why we're having this meeting, why we're opening this discussion and dialogue, and then explaining what needs to be done and kind of going from there. So start with why, as Simon
Start
Sinek
with why,
says.
Simon Sinek, yes.
Yep.
Beautiful statement. David James, how about yourself and assumptions?
Yeah, no, I think Han, I got to just skip the first names. He hit it right on the head. Like one, the human brain creates assumptions to fill in blank spots. That's cool. But you make a good point about the way, and really just being tactical when you start a meeting. This meeting is about this, right? In my meeting invites, I don't know why it's rare sometimes. The objective of the meeting, like hopefully nobody calls me out, but to my knowledge, I always have a meeting, even if it's one line. This is the point of the meeting, right? And then we can come into it with a shared understanding, and then that communication could be better, right? And then there's less assumptions that can be made. At least the audience knows, they don't have to assume for you, right? And then you can worry about, presenting your prepared material or discussing a prepared topic.
That's true. After one of our earlier conversations, David James, I went out, and anytime I send an email out now,
yes,
this is what we're talking about. And let's just get to the point. Let's just deal with the point, and let's have some pleasantries up front. Let's get to the point, and then we can have some pleasantries on the way out. You're great. The three of you are great communicators. It's proven out in your career that you're great communicators. You've gotten to where you are by being able to communicate, both by verbally and by written language. What are some tips that you would have to offer to share with individuals who are, so let's just break this into a couple of groups, right? Entry foundational level folks coming to this conversation about security. Individuals that are mid-level, so just the 3 levels, that are there and already in the trenches, in working, and are still learning how to best communicate up or down and laterally. And then executives, because they need to be able to communicate with you. They're, as executives, it's concept to product delivery. What do they need to communicate to everyone in the group, their vision and where we're going with what it is that we're working with? Milou, I'd like to start with you first about the 3 levels of communications, and just some tips, if you will.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to this. I think for entry-level practitioners, people looking to get into the field, I would say work on your report writing skills, work on your presentation skills, work on those just as hard as you're working on your technical skills. They are just as important, if not more important, than building out a home lab. So write reports about what you're doing, try to explain what it is, what you're doing, and what you're learning to your family, your friends, and see if you can share that understanding. It will help your own learning, and it will just help you immensely with your career. And I think that's one of the reasons I've been able to, ascend through the ranks of the SOC rather quickly, is because of that skill that I have with report writing that I'm constantly working on. And then I guess, I think for mid-level, I would say the same. I mean, just making sure that you're very clear about, making sure you're really clear about communication. But I guess speaking in the mid-level sense, speaking more to I don't have a management role, but I think that when you're management and in mid-level management, you're running a team or a division, it's really important to build a culture of feedback and communication within the culture of your team so that people don't feel afraid to speak up if they see something that is not going well. So people are not afraid to call out if they have made a mistake, or they see a mistake somewhere, or they think there's a process improvement somewhere. A team is only as good as we're all able to communicate and work with each other. So building that culture, I think, is really, really important. I think that's something that we can all work on together. And then, speaking with executives, I mean, that's not an area I admit that I have the most experience in, But I do think that, especially when dealing with, I just think it's really important sometimes to speak really plainly and really clearly. I think sometimes, you know, when you're at a higher level and you're kind of seeing things from 5 years in advance, you know, being able to translate that to people that are boots on the ground in a very like concrete way, a way that people can understand, is like really important. And to be able to have that clear pipeline of communication between all of the different levels. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I would say.
It makes sense too. It really does, especially for executives to be able to communicate their vision.
Yeah.
If you want folks to work with you in your vision, you need to communicate that clearly as possible. Hey, David James, how about yourself?
Yeah, in terms of like junior folks, you know, I'm going to try and pivot to not, you know, reiterate the same thing since Milou did a great job, right? I want to talk about like chat function, you know, instant messaging, right? In career, you know, you can express yourself, you express your personality, right? That's okay, right? But make sure that, you know, you're very clear and you have context, and that extends to abbreviations. Don't overly abbreviate with folks that you aren't, you know, close to. You know, if it's your first time, you know, you shouldn't have IKR, you know, LOLs in first communications, right? We want to make sure that we're communicating clearly. And then also, I'm going to pick on my engineering folks, right? Make sure you have context, especially when you're sending screenshots. If I had $1 for every screenshot or like, you know, request that had no context, you know, but that's my little pet peeve thing. But in terms of junior folks, and Milou covered a lot of other ones. In terms of, I'm going to skip ahead and say executives. Executives is all about empowering, you know, your reports, your leaders with the higher level goal, right? What does the board want? What does your senior leadership want? And making sure your leaders are aligned with that, and they're going to express it in their specialty areas, right? I think most, you know, great executives already know that, but it's at a certain point, it's almost like motivating people toward that end goal. It's less about directing how things are being done, right? You give feedback. You're the connection to, you know, the top levels of leadership, and you should have a good feel on the overall business and how things are being generated. And in the middle, I think it's, you know, it's kind of where I'm at. So I feel like we're stuck in the middle, right? You know, so we have to, you know, get the vision from leaders. We have to, you know, deal with some of the more granular things. But really it's about, you know, I hate saying generally clear communication, but make sure when you communicate something that the receiving party, whether they're granular or senior, understands, you know, your area of specialties, because, you know, we're the specialists, you know, tooting our own horns, right?
Nice. It makes perfect sense to be able to give context to who you are, where you fit into the corporate puzzle, if you will, and why this particular piece of information that you're giving to an executive or that an executive is giving to you is relevant to the conversation. David Hahn, I mean, you know, we've been talking here about the relevancy of communications, and but let's have your perspective first, and then I'll ask this other question that's burning in the back of my head over here.
Cool. So I think David James talked about why it's important to communicate well in a clear, concise manner. If I were to get more tactical, I might suggest that folks communicate in a very structured way, because I think, I don't know about y'all, but I love structure. I do work in GRC, so maybe that's a character trait or something. I don't know. But I do find that when you're communicating and briefing somebody on a topic, especially when people are coming from like jumping from meeting to meeting. I don't know if that happens to you all, but like I often find myself hopping from meeting to meeting, or like deep work to meeting, or meeting to deep work to and it's just very overwhelming. And your attention span isn't always at 100%, right? So given the limited attention span of your audience, I think we want to make it easy for them, going back to what I mentioned earlier, by structuring your thoughts. So here are a couple like examples, right? So if you're emailing somebody or if you're Slacking somebody, here's an example, like a shortened example of what I wrote the other day. So I said something along the lines of, "Hi, I'm David from the Cyber Standards and Adoption team, and I'm reaching out to see if you could grant me access to this particular dashboard. I'm trying to work on a similar dashboard for this other purpose and wanted to see if there were overlaps." So in that example, I clearly identify myself so the audience understands where I'm coming from and they can make the assumptions that they need to make. I clearly ask for what I need from them. And I also give them the context, the why behind my ask. So I'm kind of helping them help me, because I imagine, are things that I don't even know about that they would know. So by kind of explaining why you need something, it helps them help you. Another way of doing it is saying, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm reaching out because of problem X. I have a solution Y that I'd like your feedback on by end of day, end of week." So clearly time bounding it, proposing your ideas, it makes it easier for your audience, and it also time bounds, sets an expectation of when you need a response by. Another very tactical tip is signposting. I think that's really important, especially when you're delivering some sort of a presentation. So one example of signposting might be, based on this problem that we were just discussing and agreed on, I think there are 3 options that we can pursue. The first option is blank, second option is blank, third option is blank. Personally, I think we should pursue the second option because of this and that reason. There is a con that, this and that, but on balance, I think the second option is the best option. What do you all think? So again, it gives your thoughts and your analysis and your insight on the situation. You propose a solution, and then invites your audience to react to that. So both signposting and proposing solutions are also great tactics. If I can weave in the how to make a good PowerPoint.
Absolutely, I was going to get to that in a second.
So one, even though I'm representing myself and not my organization, McKinsey has these ideas called top-down communications, or the pyramid principle. For the pyramid principle, I believe there's a book by Barbara Pinto. So you might Google that and look at what the pyramid principle is. You can also, I think there's a lot of good content on YouTube by these YouTubers who are helping folks who want to become consultants in large organizations. So top-down communications and pyramid principles are 2 keywords that I might suggest you look up.
Gotcha. I hope that answers your question, whoever that person is in the chat. So, we're close to a time here. First, I want to say thank you for all that you guys have contributed to this conversation. It's been very enlightening and detailed oriented. I like that myself. As a Virgo, I'm always in the weeds on things, just looking at and trying to just decipher down into that last kernel of information, just to make sure that what I'm talking about is real and it has relevance to the entirety of our discussion. One of the last questions that we were focused around is soft skills, and what do soft skills have to do with, and how to develop them, and how to become proficient at having soft skills. That's a big term, soft skills. Nowadays, we know that it's broad. It's not just being able to talk, it's being able to write in public, all of the things involved there. So what kind of soft skills are you particularly working on yourself? And why are you working on that particular soft skill as part of your, as David Hahn would say, your career development? So Milou, you first.
Yeah, I guess for me, I am constantly working on refining my bottom line upfront and my ability to explain what I do clearly to people, of all levels and all departments. that's just really crucial to my success in my role. So just being able to write that is really important. And I'm also, personally working on, I think sometimes it can feel a little bit scary reaching out to people from other departments or executives, especially if you don't really know them or, people are really higher up. And I think, trying to make sure that the better bottom line up front I have, the better I'll be able to communicate with them. But then also just like removing my own fears and my own insecurities away from that, and reminding myself like I'm here to communicate what I think is important and what I found for protecting the business, and keeping that in the forefront of my mind. So with that, I'm working on my bottom line up front, and also just like being more confident in my communications to executives and across departments.
Great. Before I go to David James and then David Hahn, I just want to suggest that anyone who has any questions before we reach time, please put your questions into the comment chat so that these three eloquent folks can answer them and give you their perspective on communications. David James, you next on the soft skill that you're working on and why. You're on mute too, David James.
Yep. It was bound to happen at some point, right? I mean, one of the things I'm working on is, particularly in written communication, just the efficiency of it. I find that I'm decent at writing emails. I can overthink and reanalyze and, just making sure that, hey, I can, create a paper that's, that is of importance, without it taking all day or, sometimes like I had to write an email that went out to a bunch of people, different stakeholders and, people I haven't communicated with. And I kind of went through iterations, which is good, right? But improving that efficiency, like I mentioned before, it's a continual process, right? And one of the things I'm not so great at, but just my dialect, there's a lot of ums, there's a lot of yes, gotta tighten up on it. Again, that's a ever improving process.
Absolutely. Giving Grammarly a run for its money. No doubt. How about you, David Hahn?
Yeah, to practice what I preach, I'm gonna say three things that I think is that I'm working on. So beyond all the things that I was just mentioning, I'm working on breaking news in the right way. So who you tell what to, in what order, is really important. That's something that like my dad actually taught me when I was a kid, and it continues to come up over and over again, just in the professional world and just in life. So I think that's important, and I'm working on that. The second thing I'm working on is how to anticipate issues before they become issues. If I'm going to present about something and there's some aspect that affects another team in that presentation, then it's important for me to talk to that team to give them a heads up. Hey, I'm going to be presenting on this this content that relates to your team, to this audience. Just let me know if you have any feedback or comments. So that's something that I'm working on. And the last thing, among other things that I'm working on, is how to manage expectations as a whole. Again, in life and in profession. So those are the three things I'm working on. Absolutely.
Setting the right expectations. There's a question in the chat. First of all, they were happy to see everyone. The question that they lodged, the position is, do you believe that people with English as a second and or third language for multilingual individuals are able to communicate easier, or does knowing multiple languages make it more difficult to communicate? Any one of you can wrestle with that.
I'll give it a shot. It's not I'm probably not the best since I'm dominant English, but in my experience, I've seen where it benefits with technical writing, right? Because technical writing is more of a learned form, right? And then like native English speakers, we have like I was mentioning before, we have the inference to put our own, personal spin in, right? Whereas technical writing is like Milou said, bottom line up front, this is happening, this is the status, here's the result, etc. Right? And in a lot of instances, when it comes to like writing, service tickets, things like that, some of the more technical writing I've seen where people with English as a second language, they really get straight to the point. But there are definitely difficulties when, there are certain sayings that, are in English. A lot of English is just not logical, just being honest, even to pronunciations. So there's difficulties there too, but I just wanted to point out one of the benefits there.
Great. David Hahn, I know you've got some time challenges with this conversation, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to to give your final sort of closeout conversation or closing comments here before your time elapses. So please, David.
Yeah, and I think this question is actually from a friend of mine, Elliot, so I'll be sure to message you separately. But I think the most important takeaway for me personally is think about your audience. Frame your message for your audience. Think about how you should communicate, through what channels, thinking about your audience. And I think the rest of it will follow. So I hope this was a useful conversation for everybody.
Thanks for being here too, David. So also, Milou, I know that we were talking about the soft skills and what to do, how to develop, what am I working on? Thanks, Dave. Thanks for being here with us. We appreciate it. We really appreciate your time. Milou, in the time that we have left, your soft skill actually, you already told me that.
Yeah, I'm working on my bottom line up front and being confident.
Bottom line up front. And so, listen, first of all, Milou, it was you that really brought this whole conversation to the table. Really appreciate that. Looking for more from you to help engage with our audience here at Cyversity. You're a lifer, right? You're a lifer, and we really appreciate that. David James, welcome to the table. I didn't get a chance to meet you at the last conference, but I'm so happy to have a chance to engage with you here. Milou, can you, just for a minute, just talk about mentorship and your experience with mentorship here with Cyversity?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. For me, mentorship with Cyversity changed my life. Not to be cheesy, but I really would not be here without the incredible mentors that I've had through Cyversity. I am still in contact with my mentors today. They helped me break into the industry. I still call them when I have career questions or don't know what to do. I just feel so supported. So yeah, when I was originally looking to get in, my mentors spoke to me about interviewing. They spoke to me about, going to conferences and engaging with people there, about advocating for yourself, all of these really important things that I just, didn't really know about before. Working in cyber, this is my first official corporate job, I guess. So, there's so much that goes into that I did not know about before I career changed into this industry. And so that's what my mentors have been really important for. And they've just been my cheerleaders. And I can't speak enough to how wonderful the community at Cyversity is, and how just there's so many leaders that really they walk the walk. They are here to support, diverse, underrepresented talent in this industry, and here to ensure that you are supported and that you succeed. And that's just that's meant everything to me. And I'm really looking forward to, being a part of this organization and also being able to give back in the way that I have received so much through Cyversity as well.
Yes. And this is one of your give backs, because this is a session that you really focused heavily on bringing to the table. Any closing comments from either of you? I really appreciate you both being here. David Hahn has already left us. He's going back to his life at McKinsey. David James, anything to close us out?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I want to, one piece of advice I want to give to everyone is to just, the first step of learning to be a good communicator is just communicating, right? And that's, written via email, doing Slacks or chats. and taking presentation opportunities, even if it's a personal thing. Just engaging in conversations via LinkedIn with folks that you aspire to be like. I think taking the first step is just trying it. There are a lot of great tips you learned here, but I think David Hahn mentioned it. You got to get your reps in, right? So don't be afraid of overcome the imposter syndrome, like Milou said. Don't be afraid of sounding bad, or if you have a insecurity with your English as a second language, just go for it.
Yeah, I agree. It's speaking publicly in any forum is not always the easiest thing to do, but getting comfortable being uncomfortable is probably one of the biggest challenges all of us have. So, Milou, I'm going to give you the last word.
Oh boy. Left the final word. I mean, yeah, thank you so much, David. All the Davids for coming and speaking at this. This has been such an honor, and just a topic that's really close to my heart. And I think what I'd like to close with is, don't be afraid. Be fearless, and just try things. Like, you're gonna put your foot in your mouth. You're gonna make mistakes, and as long as you own up to them, you're clear about them, you work to be proactive and fix them, it's gonna be okay. You're only gonna get better by doing things, by trying, by making mistakes, and then by learning from them. And there are so many support systems out there, like Cyversity has been for me, and hopefully will be for you as well. That are here to help you as you go through your journey, and you make those mistakes, and you learn, and you grow, and you develop into hopefully an incredible practitioner, or you already are an incredible practitioner in this industry.
That's right. And we're in communications. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good.
Yes.
Just go do it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for allowing me to moderate this conversation. I really enjoyed it. I took a lot of notes. And so I'm looking forward to communicating with you guys more in the future. I know I will with you, Milou. And I know I'm going to catch up with you, David James, in the future as well. You guys be well. Caroline, thanks for taking care of us in the back end. We only went 7 minutes over today. So everybody be well.
All right, take care, everyone.
All right. If you got to leave the studio, go ahead and hit that red button at the bottom that says leave studio.